Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to a topic that's everywhere right now, and I mean for all the wrong reasons, but I guess a topic like this is not going to be there for the right reasons unless, I don't know, by a miracle they found a way to find peace for both sides and both countries, or what. I don't even know what terms I can use, right? Because this is a very touchy subject, of course, but I don't know much, if anything, to do with like the history and the reasons behind why all this happens, which is like sort of why when I see this stuff on Twitter, I mean, it's just horrible. Both sides, innocent people being hurt, and obviously a lot more than that. And it's grim, to be honest. There's a lot of horrible videos on Twitter, and there's so much more obviously happening. But I'm not even going to take sides in this one because, again, I don't know much about it. I know, see, a lot of Western countries seem to side with Israel, and then a lot of people on like Twitter and like, I mean, I guess it is like on the internet, to be honest, seem to side with Palestine. And I don't know the history. I don't really understand why it's such a contrast. It's probably a lot of historical factors that I don't know about. Well, it definitely is, but I don't know much about it. But yeah, we're gonna use this as a way to learn. Maybe people don't like the fact that this is from Vox, but 7 years ago, so I feel like it's just to get a grasp of what's happened. It's not like, maybe it's going to be biased in one way or the other, but everyone's got different opinions on this. I don't really know how you could sort of do a video related to this and not have someone offended, but I'm just here to learn and see really why this is all happening, and that's pretty much it. It is absolutely horrible, and I also see people from either side, like they're flipping say innocent people being hurt, and again, more than that, I don't want to say the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. They'll say, oh, this is because of this, them doing this and that doing that. Like, people making excuses for both sides of innocent people having these horrible things happen. It's just like, come on, man, use your, like, have a bit of like, I don't know, just think about this is like actually someone's life, and I'm sure a lot of the people being hurt, again, both sides, and I know a lot more like things have happened in the past, and maybe the news hasn't showed it as much to do with like Palestine specifically, and maybe now because it's like it's happening on both sides a lot more, it's coming to the news more, which I guess could be an unfair sort of thing that people see. Like, it's only getting shown when, I guess, it's now being an attack on Israel and stuff like that. But you know what, I'm just here to sort of see what's truly happened and the reasons behind it. And I mean, I just don't see how this could end either, to be honest. I mean, from the little that I have seen and heard, it's just like, this is one of those ones that you just can't see ending anytime soon because of the region that it's in and stuff like that. And it's obviously, I mean, it's mainly to do with like religion, right? I mean, I think that is like the premise of most of it. So yeah, we're going to see and learn, and yeah, I'm talking loads at this point. Let's just get into this.
One of the biggest myths about the Israel-Palestine conflict is that it's been going on for centuries, all about ancient religious hatreds. In fact, while religion is involved, conflict's mostly about two groups of people who claim the same land, and it really only goes back about a century to the early 1900s. Around then, the region along the eastern Mediterranean we now call Israel-Palestine, been under Ottoman rule for centuries, was religiously diverse, including mostly Muslims and Christians, also a small number of Jews who lived generally in peace.
Okay.
It was changing in two important ways. First, more people in the region were developing a sense of being not just ethnic Arabs, but Palestinians, a distinct national identity. At the same time, not so far away in Europe, more Jews were joining a movement called Zionism, which said that Judaism was not just a religion, but a nationality, one that deserved a nation of its own. And after centuries of persecution,
this is really recent history then. I would have thought this would have gone back hundreds or thousands of years, if anything. That is wild to me. I didn't know that. I thought this would have been like going back 500, 600, 700 years, and again probably more than that.
Many believed a Jewish state was their only way of safety and saw their historic homeland in the Middle East as their best hope for establishing it. In the first decades of the 20th century, tens of thousands of European Jews moved there. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and British and French empires carved up the Middle East, the British taking control of a region.
Of course, Britain are getting involved already. Of course, that's what's happening.
It called the British Mandate for Palestine. first, the British allowed Jewish immigration. But as more Jews arrived, settling into farming communities, tension between Jews and Arabs grew. Both sides committed acts of violence, and by the 1930s, the British began limiting Jewish immigration. In response, Jewish militias formed to fight both the local Arabs and to resist British rule. Then came the Holocaust, leading many more Jews to flee Europe for British Palestine and galvanizing much
So
of the
this point is called British Palestine. Or no, maybe it's just British, in British control at that point. Of course they're the fucking reason for all of that, right? So was Britain getting their paws involved in anything?
world in support of a Jewish state. In 1947, as sectarian violence between Jews and Arabs there grew, the United Nations approved a plan to divide British Palestine into two separate states. One for Jews, Israel, and one for Arabs.
It's quite weird how this sectioned it off like that. I mean, there's probably historical reasons for it, right? That I can't really understand, and I'm never going to understand, so that's fair enough. But split off in many different sections.
Palestine. The city of Jerusalem, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians all have holy sites, was to become a special international zone.
Okay.
The plan was meant to give Jews a state, to establish Palestinian independence, and to end the sectarian violence that the British could no longer control. The Jews accepted the plan, and they declared independence as Israel. But Arabs throughout the region saw the UN plan as just more European colonialism trying to steal their land. Many of the Arab states, who had just recently won independence themselves, declared war on Israel in an effort to establish a unified Arab Palestine where all of British Palestine had been. The new state of Israel won the war, but in the process, they pushed well past their borders under the UN plan, taking the western half of Jerusalem and much of the land that was to have been part of Palestine.
Oh, damn.
They also expelled huge numbers of Palestinians from their homes, creating a massive refugee population whose descendants today number about 7 million.
So this is Gaza, and I don't know much about this area, but I know basically people are trapped here, right? It's an absolute shit show of what happens here. Like they're trapped from both. I think I was reading up about this a bit before, and I think they're trapped from both sides. They're not allowed to leave because Egypt don't want them for some reason, and then obviously I guess Israel as well. It's awful. Like when you actually think about it, it makes you feel so like just terrible. Because what's actually going to happen? There's never going to be any. I don't think this is going to be one of those ones where it's just going to be going on for hundreds of years. I don't see any sort of end to this.
At the end of the war, Israel controlled all of the territory except for Gaza, which Egypt controlled, and the West Bank, named because it's west of the Jordan River, which Jordan controlled. This was the beginning of the decades-long Arab-Israeli conflict. During this period, many Jews in Arab-majority countries fled or were expelled, arriving in Israel. Then something happened that transformed the conflict. In 1967, Israel and the neighboring Arab states fought another war. When it ended, Israel had seized the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank from Jordan, and both Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. Israel was now occupying the Palestinian territories, including all of Jerusalem and its holy sites. This left Israel responsible for governing the Palestinians, a people it had fought for decades. In 1978, Israel and Egypt signed the US-brokered Camp David Accords. Shortly after that, Israel gave Sinai back to Egypt as part of the peace treaty. At the time, this was hugely controversial in the Arab world. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was assassinated in part because of outrage against it. But it marked the beginning of the end of the wider Arab-Israeli conflict. Over the next few decades, the other Arab states gradually made peace with Israel, even if they never signed formal peace treaties. But Israel's military was still occupying the Palestinian territories of the West Bank and Gaza, and this is when the conflict became an Israeli-Palestinian struggle. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, which had formed in the 1960s to seek a Palestinian state, fought against Israel, including through acts of terrorism. Initially, the PLO claimed all of what had been British Palestine, meaning it wanted to end the state of Israel entirely. Fighting between Israel and the PLO went on for years, even including a 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon to kick the group out of Beirut.
The stillness of the ceasefire in southern Lebanon was shattered today by the sound of guns, bombs, and planes.
The PLO later said it would accept dividing the land between Israel and Palestine, but the conflict continued. As all of this was happening, something dramatic was changing in the Israel-occupied Palestinian territories. Israelis were moving in. These people are called settlers, and they made their homes in the West Bank and Gaza, whether Palestinians wanted them or not. Some moved for religious reasons, some because they want to claim the land for Israel, some just because the housing is cheap, and often subsidized by the Israeli government. Some settlements are cities with thousands of people, others are small communities deep into the West Bank.
If you've always felt a deep yearning for Jerusalem, now is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not only to stand within its gates, but also to build the home of your dreams there.
The settlers are followed by soldiers to guard them, and the growing settlements force Palestinians off of their land and divide communities. Short term, they make the occupation much more painful for Palestinians. Long term, by dividing up Palestinian land, they make it much more difficult for the Palestinians to ever have an independent state. Today, there are several 100,000 settlers in occupied territory, even though the international community considers them illegal. By the late 1980s, Palestinian frustration exploded into the Intifada, which is the Arabic word for uprising. It began with mostly protests and boycotts, but soon became violent. Israel responded with heavy force. A couple hundred Israelis, over 1,000 Palestinians died in the First Intifada. Around the same time, a group of Palestinians in Gaza, who considered the PLO too secular, too compromise-minded, created Hamas, a violent extremist group.
And I mean, we're seeing a lot of about these now involved in a lot of what's happening. Well, not a lot of the news of what's happening. Like, it's so hard to write because there's just so many factors into this. Like, again, I'm still so unknowledgeable about this. I don't want to say the wrong thing or really say much at all. But it's just like, it's so hard to really to really understand how this will end, because there's just so many little factors and big factors and just a mixture of all that kind of stuff. That it's just like, this is going to be never ending. I don't see how this will ever be sorted, because no one's ever going to be happy with what happens. It's so messed up, man. It's just crazy how this has all ended up happening.
Dedicated to Israel's destruction. By the early 1990s, it's clear that Israelis and Palestinians have to make peace. The leaders from both sides signed the Oslo Accords.
And how does it work? Like, when, like, because obviously they live among each other, right? I'm assuming in a lot of these areas, they live among one another. So, like, there's different religions and different cultures within, like, the same places. So, like, what is, like, in terms of, like, the sort of, how is it viewed in, like, the equality? Like, are people actually equal, dependent on their beliefs and stuff? I guess that's probably one of the big problems. Maybe some people aren't treated as well and stuff like that. Again, I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. But with all this sort of anger towards each other, I just don't see how this could ever actually work. It's so wild to me.
This is meant to be the big first step toward Israel maybe someday withdrawing from the Palestinian territories and allowing an independent Palestine.
But wasn't that the plan to start with? See, I'm so confused. Wasn't that the plan to start with? He said it already, but, like, I guess now it's sort of gone 180, right? So that was the plan, but then stuff happened, and then they ended up invading and taking more, and then they gave some back, but maybe they're not willing to give that part back now. But at the same time, once they give that back, is that the end? Or there's still going to be terrorist organisations that will want more, right? Because he mentioned a few minutes ago about how there was a group that want all of Israel gone. They want it to become, well, I guess Palestine, or maybe would it be all Palestine, or what? I guess it would be. So I don't see how it would end after they give back that part. So it's just wild, man.
The Oslo Accords established the Palestinian Authority, allowing Palestinians a little bit of freedom to govern themselves in certain areas. Hardliners on both sides opposed the Oslo Accords. Members of Hamas launched suicide bombings to try to sabotage the process. The Israeli right protests peace talks, with ralliers calling Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin a traitor and a Nazi. Not long after Rabin signs the second round of Oslo Accords, a far-right Israeli shoots him to death in Tel Aviv. But this violence showed how extremists on both sides can use violence to derail peace, keep a permanent conflict going as they seek the other side's total destruction. That's a dynamic that's been around ever since. Negotiations meant to hammer out the final details on peace drag on for years, and a big Camp David summit in 2000 comes up empty. Palestinians come to believe peace isn't coming, rise up in a second intifada, this one much more violent than the first. By the time it wound down a few years later, about 1,000 Israelis and 3,200 Palestinians had died. The second intifada really changes the conflict. Israelis become much more skeptical that Palestinians will ever accept peace or that it's even worth trying. Israeli politics shift right, the country builds walls and checkpoints to control Palestinians' movements. They're not really trying to solve the conflict anymore, just manage it. The Palestinians are left feeling like negotiating didn't work and violence didn't work, and that they're stuck under an ever-growing occupation with no future as a people. That year, Israel withdraws from Gaza. Hamas gains power, but splits from the Palestinian Authority in a short civil war, dividing Gaza from the West Bank. Israel puts Gaza under a suffocating blockade, and unemployment rises to 40%. This is the state of the conflict as we know it today. It's relatively new, and it's unbearable for Palestinians. In the West Bank, more and more settlements are smothering Palestinians, often respond with protests and sometimes with violence, though most just want normal lives. In Gaza, Hamas and other violent groups have periodic wars with Israel. The fighting overwhelmingly kills Palestinians, including lots of civilians. In Israel itself, most people have become apathetic. For the most part, the occupation keeps the conflict relatively removed from their daily lives, with moments of brief but horrible violence. There's little political will for peace. No one really knows where the conflict goes from here. Maybe a third intifada, maybe the Palestinian Authority collapses. But everyone agrees that things as they are now can't last much longer. Israel's occupation of the Palestinians is too unstable to last, and that unless something dramatic changes, whatever comes next will be much worse.
Well, I know there's obviously a lot of conflict between these two, I guess you could say, countries, right? And it's always popping up every so often. But I feel like now it's definitely gone to a point now where it's like it's just in the news more. To be honest, that's probably it. That's why I'm hearing about it more. God, it's so messed up. There's so many. It's just like an entanglement that I can't see ever ending, man. It's just like they're all tangled up. There's points here. There's points here. I just can't see an outcome where it doesn't flipping stop. My heart goes out to the innocent families being affected by this war. Yeah, honestly, it is brutal. Amazing how interesting history is when you're not just learning it all to pass an exam. Yeah, that's very true. The fact that this video has been made 5 years ago, but seems like it was made for the current. Yeah, there we go as well. Oh man, it is absolutely horrible. Honestly, there's not much more you can say, but I mean, let me know your thoughts. If you're someone who is affected by this, or you just know a lot about this, whatever it is, let me know your thoughts and all that kind of stuff. But god damn, man, there's just no end to it, man. I can't see this ever ending. It's one of those ones where you see it, and both sides are going to claim they're like what they believe in is that, and I just can't see how it's ever going to stop. Like on one side, Israel wants to probably keep doing what it's doing, and then Palestine will want its territory back, and then probably want more. Maybe not necessarily Palestine, but groups like around Palestine and stuff like that will definitely want more. And it's just like there's always going to be something going on, even if they got their land back. I feel like there's going to be continuous wars, but then at the same time, like grouping people in an area that they can't leave, it's just like it's absolute hell. It's absolute hell, man. But honestly, yeah, let me know your thoughts, and that's pretty much it. Until next time, peace.